DG? DG? What, the green complexion, what would you diagnose it? Brucellosis or FMD?
Too much bologna.
No, it's envy.
Envy.
Going to watch some of the TV straight from GCI.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Want to start now?
Yeah, we will go to
Mighty paperclip.
Good morning, members of the media. Welcome to the media briefing of the Department of Agriculture. We'll be starting at half 12 exact. In the meantime, I will introduce the panel. I'll start with the Minister of the Department, Ms. Steenhuisen, followed by Deputy Minister, Ms. Kapa, and the Director General, Mr. Ramasodi. Also, we have in the panel DDG Saraje, as well as DDG Komabe. We'll start with the Minister giving a brief address of what happened in the National Assembly when we were tackling the speeches, and then we'll follow up with the DM giving brief remarks about the development in the National Assembly. Thereafter, we will have the questions. Thanks. Minister?
Great. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and may I thank the members and senior management of the department for joining me, and of course my Deputy Minister, Deputy Mkapa. Thank you very much for being here, and of course to members of the media, and of course those who are watching at home. It is a great honor to be able to address you immediately after the tabling of the budget for the Department of Agriculture's 25-26 year in Parliament. And I think it's a pivotal moment not only for the department, but for the broader agricultural sector and all those who depend on it for sustenance, for employment, and for opportunity. It'll be the first standalone budget of the Department of Agriculture since the split from the Department of Rural Development and Land Reform. When we entered the Government of National Unity just over a year ago, we did so with a very clear mandate to restore delivery, to deepen accountability, and to rebuild trust, not only with our producers and partners, but with the millions of South Africans who rely and look to agriculture on a daily basis for food, jobs, and hope. Today I can say with humility and conviction that we are making measurable progress. In terms of rebuilding institutions and restoring trust, our first priority has been to build a capable, ethical, and responsive department. We initiated a comprehensive restructuring process, finalized the new macro structure, and began modernizing procurement, auditing, and performance oversight systems. This work is essential. Before we can grow anything in our fields, we need to make sure that we are able to fix what is broken within our own institutions. The second priority area has been on restoring biosecurity and disaster preparedness. In a world of rapidly increasing plant and animal disease outbreaks, biosecurity is no longer just a technical matter. It is an economic and national imperative. As we've seen with the recent outbreak of foot and mouth disease, it has economic consequences, but also consequences for food security as well. Over the last year, we've established the National Biosecurity Compact and Biosecurity Council, which brings together scientists, lobbyists, industry experts, as well as officials to coordinate outbreak responses. We deployed animal health technicians to vaccinate against foot and mouth disease in Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal, as well as adopting a new strategic approach to the management of foot and mouth outbreaks. We relaunched the National Biosecurity Hub in partnership with the University of Pretoria, and a very constructive biosecurity summit was held just over a fortnight ago in Pretoria, where international and local experts shared perspectives on what South Africa could be doing to improve our biosecurity regime. And we've commenced the country's first avian influenza vaccination campaign, supported by upgraded digital disease surveillance and partnership with the industry. These efforts, we believe, will go some way in restoring confidence in our export systems, but at the same time protect farmers from catastrophic losses and consumers from radical food price increases. The third area where we've expressed focus is expanding market access and defending trade. South African agriculture cannot grow without access to global markets. This is a very important thing to understand. There are some who say that, well, you should focus on only supplying food to your own country. The reality, however, is that if we want to see growth in the sector, profitability, employment, and economic stimulus, we absolutely have to focus on exporting our much desired and very highly regarded agricultural products to other parts of the world. This helps stimulate the demand and helps us improve the supply. And when those go up, jobs increase, economic activities increase. And so it's not an either or, it is an and. We have to have food security for our own citizens here at home, but at the same time we must have foreign trade in order to ensure that our agriculture sector flourishes, is sustainable, viable and profitable, and ensures more investment in research and development, in new techniques, in new remedies. Over the course of the last year, we facilitated new access for avocados to China, maize to Japan and India, beef to the Middle East, and table grapes to the Philippines and Vietnam. We managed a quick resolution to Botswana's temporary ban on South African maize and wheat, and thanks to the efforts of the department with trade and industry, we're able to reopen the border within 2 weeks. We were part of the presidential delegation to FOCAC in China, and we secured protocols for wool, dairy, and meat exports, and departments participated in high-level panel delegations to Davos, Japan, and Berlin. I've had formal bilateral engagements with counterparts from the G7, the AU, and the G20, as well as the European Union, advancing our market access and sharing with them our plans on how we intend to improve biosecurity. Thanks to these efforts, agricultural exports for Q1 25 reached US $3.36 billion, a 10% increase year on year. And I think you've seen how this has contributed to the GDP of the country. The fourth priority has obviously been on delivering targeted farmer support. Support must be effective and inclusive, and this year over 6,000 farmers received direct support through 1.7 billion rands worth of allocation, creating 3,000 jobs. Through the Lima Letsema program, we supported 67,492 vulnerable households, generating nearly 9,500 work opportunities. We launched new smallholder farmer programs in Jozini and beyond, focusing on shifting the paradigm from grow and sell to grow to sell. We're also fast-tracking global GAP accreditation for emerging producers and expanding access to finance for small producers via a restructured blended finance scheme. Fifthly, promoting a modern fit-for-purpose regulatory environment. In May, we took the decision to revoke the designation of an assignee in the grain inspection area, protecting consumers from unnecessary costs that would have arisen and hit bread prices the hardest. This action was taken in the public interest and demonstrates the government's commitment to lowering the cost of food and to regulatory fairness. We're also reviewing outdated legislation, including the Fertiliser and Stock Remedies Act, and will soon table amendments to support modern, science-based agricultural systems that are agile and able to move with the changing technology. Sixth focus has been on powering the next generation. We've made it very clear that the future of agriculture lies with youth. Over 3,000 agricultural graduates have entered internship programs, and we've begun the process of integrating agricultural colleges into the higher education system, starting with Elsenburg. We've invested in climate-smart agriculture, pollinator protection, agroecology, and digital agri-tech tools to make agriculture attractive to the next generation. Some have colloquially said it, we need to make agriculture more sexy for the youth. And to explain very clearly that agriculture goes beyond just getting your hands dirty in the soil, but it involves science, it's economics, it's technology, it's AI, and so many exciting fields that are going to transform the agricultural space. The seventh focus has been on fighting food insecurity. Hunger is not an abstraction in this country, it is a daily reality. And in the last year, we launched the National Food and Nutrition Survey, Security Survey, to provide us with baseline data and to shape targeted interventions across government, not necessarily just the Agriculture Department, but the study now provides a tool to social development, to basic education, and also to local government authorities, because it drills down and measures food insecurity at a municipal district level, which allows us then, when we have targeted interventions, to make sure that we are using what resources we have in the best possible way. We've also promoted the use of indigenous underutilized crops such as bambara, groundnuts, and amaranth. We've also entered into a strategic partnership with the Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations to help with the program of delivery and resource mobilization. We continue to work with our counterparts in Japan through the SHEP program, which focuses on teaching farmers how to produce for markets. We've also been leading in the agricultural space internationally. We've attended, the Deputy Minister and I, as well as officials from the department, have attended key global platforms from the G7 Agricultural Forum to the G20 Working Group in Rio to the Nutrition for Growth Summit in Paris. These have not been ceremonial, and it has been unfortunate to see the characterization of some of these trips as some sort of junkets overseas. The department only travels on trips that we regard are essential and present a true benefit for our particular programs, both here and internationally. When traveling, we always use the best ways to manage travel to ensure that we travel at the least expense for the department, and that we always bring back some value for money from the trips here. So we've advocated within these global forums for more inclusive financing for smallholders, a coordinated global response to climate shocks, as well as a recognition of Africa's contribution to food systems transformation. It is very clear that Africa stands particularly well poised over the next 10 to 15 years to become the breadbasket of the world. We have fertile soils, we have rich indigenous knowledge across the continent in key aspects of agriculture, and with some assistance, with technology, with some new breakthroughs, I believe that Africa can become the true breadbasket of the world and solidify our place in the global system. After 1 year in the administration, our message is clear. The Department of Agriculture is focused now it is responsive, and it is delivering. We've got a very long road ahead of us, but I think that we've taken the right first steps. This is a new season for agriculture in South Africa, with a department that is focused solely on the agriculture sector. It is rooted in inclusion, driven by data and science, led by partnerships, and committed to feeding our people and the world. Thank you very much for your participation today. I'm now going to hand over to the Deputy Minister to make a few remarks, whereafter we will open for questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Minister, and good afternoon to all in the House. I fully agree with the state of affairs as outlined by the Minister. It's not very different to what he delivered in the House today, and also what we will be delivering in the National Council of Provinces this afternoon. Areas of my interest in the entire department, as well as the target groups that I want to focus on. We have got an obligation as the Government of National Unity, as per our other constitutional obligations, that we must all have healthy food every day at the required time. We do know, therefore, that the survey that the Minister speaks of didn't have a good picture about our communities. Some still have very little or nutritious food. Their living style is quite different to others. It is also due to those principles that the Minister touched on that we must comply to our constitution that there's food for everyone. This will only be possible if we help each and every citizen to produce their own. I think we will have to reduce a little in the areas where we plant flowers and expand a few cabbage and spinach for our life. And I believe the little, I know is not enough. I'm a South African too. The little that is given by social development, it would be a happy day if those who go and get their grant, they are in a position to bring some from their land, from their small gardens to sell to those who don't produce. So instead of fetching this money only, it's good to also add to what you have gained through your production. Ndiyabona ke sodibana emasimini sonke. Nathi apha simele kuyolima emakhaya. The last one is the fact that producers are not only educated in agriculture, they actually inherited this type of business from their homes. But it is not going to be easy to say, when I don't have land, I must produce. I'm saying people must produce because they do have land under their toes. The little you have. I know there is no land. I don't remember people living only in flats in South Africa. They always have a little of land within their reach, which we are urging as a department that we will do everything to support those people. You know, this what we have, the urban farming. Even on your roof, you can still do get food enough for your meal. instead of buying everything. On the issue of exports, because I am not a coward, Minister, I hear all the threats, all what is going to happen to us tomorrow. We'll have no exports, we'll have tariffs that are up and so on. It is true. It can happen, but it will not be a one-way flight, because we must ensure that all of us, the millions of us, buy from food produced by agriculture and their partners. So instead of having these black dots, oranges, sold to us only, and the best crosses the boundaries, we must also benefit from what we produce. How many schools in South Africa do we have? And in two meals per school, per 100 students in a school, in a boarding hostel, in jail. Jails are actually filling up. We need to gear ourselves that our market primarily is at home. Then, sobanika, what has been left in that. It cannot be our way of life. I'm not saying it's not right, or I'm saying the minister is wrong in terms of exports. It's good. It makes money. It actually increase our growth, dollars and all the other monies that are not around. But my belief is that we have got enough. Our cattle, them, our stock, they are also fresh. So I am pretty sure this rain, no one must feel we are very small to deal with it. But then in terms of nutrition, every country, wherever we go, you can judge by the type of nutritional state and healthy status of their own elderly people and children. And this is what is in front of us as producers of food, also ensuring food handling that is not going to be poisonous, but good for the health of our own. I think there's a lot to say, to talk about, but today our debate was very healthy. All of us, we have the focus in where we were in our unit. We are very united in that type of a room where we were debating. We were debating the real issues. Those of talking about land, they do it so that we understand their need and the need of their constituencies. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Minister and the Deputy Minister, for the remarks. Before I open for questions, I would like to introduce the CEO of the National Agricultural Marketing Council, seated on my extreme left, Mr. Simphiwe Ngweni. Now we can start with the questions. When you raise your hand, please introduce yourself as well as the media house that you come from. Okay, now we can start. I noted yourself with the number 2, number 3, lady in there, and the gentleman at the back. In that order, please.
Thank you. Jason Felix, News 24. Just to Mr. Steenhuisen, could you please just paint us a picture of how things will look for South Africa with a 30% tariff imposed on us, especially on agricultural goods and agricultural products? Have you spoken to President Ramaphosa about this? He released a statement yesterday. What is the reaction from government now? And just lastly, is there any room for negotiating with the USA, specifically the Trump administration? They don't appear to be moving away from the 30% imposition. And have you considered any trade-offs to avert what you have said in the House is dire state for the country. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Minister. I'm Michelle van der Spy from Landbou Weerblad. I would please like to know what the department's total budget is and how much has been allocated to each of the 4 core programs that you've indicated. Thank you.
Afternoon, Nasipi from Newsroom. Minister, just to jump on Jason's question, which sectors will be hardest hit? And I also wanted to find out the discussions that you had with legislators and business people. What was those discussions? Have there been any counter proposals in the 3 months following the meeting that you had in the US?
Hi, my name is Bulelani from SABC. Just also on the increase in export tariffs, Minister, in your budget vote, you indicated that there needs to be urgent reforms. In the agricultural sector, what would you like to see happening? Linked to that, the decision has been made in relation to South Africa's association with BRICS. Do you reconcile that with the decision when you seem to think that the urgent reforms are needed more than offsetting the association with BRICS? Secondly, you say that you need to look at new markets given that you may not have the full access to the US given the tariff increase. Have you been able to indicate or been able to consider which of those new markets are you looking at and what would be different now, or what would you be seeing now that you haven't been seeing in the past? And lastly, just on the unemployed graduates program, it seems to be, if the Honorable Nutama's stats are correct, he's saying that the committee has indicated that it supports the employment of 5,000 graduates, but the budget seems to be having enough money for 320. And just now you indicated that there have been 3,000 internships that have been created. Just looking at just a simple example of a lady that has just approached me. She finished in 2022 and she's not been able to get employment in the farming and agricultural sector. And the end result of that, she's decided to go and apply subs. Just your message to those people who are discouraged in terms of entering the market, given the uneven access in the sector. Thank you. Okay, thanks a lot. Maybe before the Minister, the panel starts answering the question. Jolene, do you have any questions from the WhatsApp?
Yes, Minister, I have 2 questions for Minister Steenhuisen. The one is from Naila Ibrahim from News 24 Business. She's saying that Minister Steenhuisen referred to urgent reforms that South Africa must apply to satisfy our trade partners. What reforms does the Minister recommend to satisfy partners like the US, and what would that look like? She also wants to know, has there been an official decision from government to renegotiate, and what will that be? Then we have one from Linda Inzor from Business Day. Minister, isn't it a bit unrealistic to think that there's scope to negotiate with the US administration over the 30% tariff increase now that it has been announced? What makes you think this is possible?
Okay, thanks a lot. I think we can start answering.
Thank you very much. I'll start with Jason Felix. Agriculture is particularly exposed on a number of issues, although the trade with the US accounts for around 4 to 6% of our global trade. It is heavily concentrated in a number of sectors. It's heavily concentrated in citrus, wine, table grapes, and nuts. and there are large citrus producers that produce almost exclusively for export to the US markets, and obviously they would be heavily affected. What the 30% tariff would essentially mean is that South Africa's products would become uncompetitive against other countries that would not be subject to those same tariffs. So we've seen very clearly a lot of our competitors in South America and the like. If they end up with only 10% and we end up with 30%, it means that our goods become a lot more expensive and therefore a lot less desirable in those markets, or marketable in those markets. And so that is the devastation that could be wrought on it. I believe that there is still room for negotiation. I think that we can firstly welcome the fact that these tariffs weren't put in on the 9th, as was originally threatened, tomorrow. The fact that the deadline's been moved now to the 1st of August is, to me, a very clear indication that there exists opportunity for a deal to be done still between South Africa and the US. When I attended the visit with President Ramaphosa to Washington, Minister Tau and myself were able to meet with the US Trade Representative, Ambassador Jamison Greer, at the USTR office in Washington. It is very clear that what America has done is adopted a process where they're trying to right a trade balance that exists, a trade imbalance that exists with a number of countries. In that meeting, they, for instance, had a copy of our balance of trade with China, our balance of trade with the UK, and our balance of trade with the European Union. And they've gone through those with a line item, and they've obviously raised questions about why they get charged tariff X, but EU gets charged tariff Y. Subsequent to that, there's also been some very clear indications that the main thrust of their trade concerns are not in the agricultural space. And in fact, we've done a lot within the agri space to address some of their concerns that they regarded as trade irritants. They regarded our approach, for instance, on avian flu bans as unreasonable and as a trade irritant. We've moved intentionally towards a self-lift, self-ban process there to remove that as an irritant. There was outstanding issues on blueberries and a few other items. Those have been removed. The chief issues appear to exist in the import of vehicles. One of the issues that was raised with me directly was the issue particularly of the import of mining equipment and heavy-duty equipment, mining vehicles. The European Union gets a favorable tariff here. China has a favorable tariff, but John Deere and others face higher tariffs. So what they've done is essentially gone through and looked at a line-by-line item. And the very clear message to us during that period was that we don't want to compete with South African companies, but we want to be able to compete fairly against our competitors in Europe, the UK, and China. And that's what they are attempting to write here. So I do believe there is still room for negotiation, and agriculture, and I want to thank the sector for coming to the table. Our poultry, our pork sector have all come to the table to try and assist from an agri space in getting through the impasse. However, I think that when we were in discussions with the USTR, they regarded the initial the initial plan we put on the table as unambitious. They were looking for a more ambitious plan. And obviously now it's important that we focus on doing that. And I think we've now bought some time now till the end of the month, where we still have time to put on the table a credible alternative. And obviously this is a process being led by Minister Tau from the DTRC, but we've obviously been making input as the Department of Agriculture into this. Michelle, I will give you a full copy of the budget book, which has a line item response on your question. I'll give you every single one of the figures, unless the DG has them to hand, which he can read out. But we will make sure that you all get provided with the budget book, so you can see department by department, program by program, what is due to be sent out there. Nasipi, I think I've answered the questions that you asked already about the sectors hardest hit will be citrus, wine, nuts, and table grapes. And so organizations like the Citrus Growers Association, Fruit SA, and others have been particularly exercised at working with the department to try and avert a situation where these tariffs come into play. I think there are a number of reforms that will be required in South Africa. And when I said that, it wasn't to say that that's to satisfy our trading partners. It's to make sure that we are more fit for purpose to fix the trade problems in South Africa. And obviously the first one that comes to mind is our ports and harbours. And that's why it's so important, the work that Minister Creasy is doing within the Government of National Unity with her request for information. There's been an overwhelming response. And I think that if we can find that private sector collaboration and partnership in the port and rail space, I think it's going to dramatically increase our ability to export goods. The citrus industry and the fruit industry have all said that in the medium term they could expand by up to 4 times their production if they were guaranteed the right infrastructure to be able to get their goods to markets, essentially. Cutting red tape, ensuring that we don't do things that undermine investor confidence in the country. These are all things that can contribute to it. Is it because of BRICS? Well, I think that if you look at who got the letters yesterday evening, there's countries that got the 30% letter that are not associated with BRICS at all. Japan got their 25%, Malaysia, I think there were 14 countries last night. Currently there are countries today that will receive it. I believe that these latest round of letters, without implementing the tariffs from the 9th of July when they were supposed to come into effect, means that there is now space for these countries to go back to the US with some ideas around what needed to be done. Of course, we have an unemployment problem in the country. Expanded unemployment around 40%, with the largest youth unemployment rate in the world. And it would be naive to think that the agriculture sector would be immune to the unemployment crisis that bedevils South Africa. And that is why a large part of the focus of this budget is around growing the sector so that we can create more opportunities for more unemployed people within agriculture. It's not only in the skilled graduate space, but also in the underskilled space as well. There's only several ways that you can absorb large numbers of underskilled labour in South Africa. Tourism is one, manufacturing is another, but agriculture, I think, offers a huge opportunity for us to be able to employ more, and that's why we're so passionate about growing the sector. It's why we want to grow exports so that we can ensure that we stimulate local demand and to meet that international demand, and we can improve and grow the supply. For every hectare of apples or pears that are put in, it's 1.5 jobs. And that's just on farm and packhouse level. That's not even through the rest of the value chain. So there's huge opportunities for us in the agri-space to make sure that these unemployed young people are able to find work. There was unfortunately a pronunciation, and I always say a cheque was written on behalf of the Department of Agriculture by a former head of state who indicated that there was to be 10,000 extension officers. Now, even the figure of 5,000, if we were to employ 5,000 extension officers in the department, it would mean that we would have to cancel out 80% of the programs that we're doing. We'd have to cut farmer support. We'd have to cut the money that we give to provinces for projects on the ground. We'd have to cut the Liba Letsema CASPA money in order to take on employee costs in the department. Now, that's not to say that we are not working as hard as we can within the means that we have to be able to start bringing on board more agricultural extension officers. I think promises were made and cheques were written that we've now been expected to cash, but the reality is that we simply can't. And as much as I would love, and the DG and all of us would love to hire 5,000, 10,000, 15,000 extension officers to get out on the ground and assist to grow the sector. The reality is we have to cut our coat according to the cloth. And whenever we go to Treasury for more money, they always say, well, what would you like us to cut? Must we cut from teachers? Must we cut from nurses? Must we cut from doctors? And so it's a balancing act. And we're taking on 230 extension officers in this financial year. And we've got a commitment to grow that number as we go on. And I said I'm desperately, I feel desperate for the situation of every unemployed person in the country, but I'm also, because I'm the Minister of Agriculture, don't like people in the agri space to be facing the terrible burden of unemployment and people who live without the dignity of a job. But I have a finite budget, and I've got to cover a number of bases with that budget that goes beyond just extension services, and we're trying our best to balance as much as possible. So my message there is, if we can grow the sector, we can grow jobs. And that is what I'm absolutely committed to doing, to make sure that we grow the sector so that there are more and more and increasing employment opportunities for people in South Africa. And so to that, the lady concerned that you say is now looking at going to SAPS. Obviously, you've got to look for work where you can find work. But I will get up every single morning and do what I can. And I know the DG and the Deputy Minister and everyone at this table and everyone across the department gets up every morning to look how we can grow the sector to ensure that we can provide more employment opportunities for more people in the agri-space. When the agriculture sector flourishes, it reflects incredibly well on our department. And I also think that agriculture is bringing to the table a great contribution, particularly to GDP and growth and jobs going forward. Linda from, thank you very much. I believe there is still room to negotiate. And obviously, I've not had an opportunity to speak to Minister Tau in the last 12 hours, but obviously that this news will be percolating through government, and it's going to require a coordinated response. And agriculture stands ready to work with Minister Tau and the rest of the government to ensure that we can put on the table something that will be able to avoid that 30% tariff. I think the fact that, as I said, it's been extended to the end of the month and not being implemented as it was intended to tomorrow means that there is still room for negotiation, and we must use that window wisely to be able to put together something. I'll continue to engage with the United States. Our department appointed an agricultural attaché based in Washington, precisely to start helping dealing with trade irritants and some of the issues that the US has. As early as this morning, I met with US trade and representatives, and we're obviously trying to find a way through this particular situation, which has certainly upended the world trade system, where it's not just South Africa, there's many, many other countries that are facing the similar tariff nightmare that they've woken up to. New markets, well, obviously what we're wanting to do is to take existing markets where we already have trade agreements with existing partners and widen and deepen them. That's obviously the cleverest way to start, because you already have the relationship, you already have trade. So we are going through and examining every single one of our trade agreements and look at where we can add more products, where we can deepen, where we can increase volumes. And I think the increase this year on volumes of avocados, for instance, to China, speaks to that particular strategy about getting more product out there. Then, of course, looking for new markets. And I want to just sound a caution, because there's some who say, well, just leave the US, we'll go and sell our stuff to other countries. It takes a lot longer than that. These things don't happen overnight. Some of these protocols take a number of years to negotiate. You've got to get the phytosanitary protocols right. It involves dealing with scientists and animal technicians from other countries. And those protocols don't just happen overnight. They take a while to negotiate. So finding new markets it's an additional to holding on to existing markets. And so I don't want there to be this perception out there that, well, America must just be left to its own devices. We'll sell our oranges elsewhere. It's not that simple. And what you should do is do everything that you can to try and hold on to existing markets, and then you view new markets as a process. So in the medium term, we've identified the Middle East, the Near East, as well as Africa, as places where we believe there's an opportunity for agricultural expansion in the country, in terms of South Africa's agriculture sector. And I think if we can get those right, I think that it would be an addition to existing markets, and of course, as I've said, ensuring that we find those areas where we can deepen and widen existing trade. I think I've covered all of them. If I didn't miss any out. Okay. Sorry, the budget figures are here. Do you want to have a readout of them? Thanks.
Thank you very much in terms of the question on the budget. And I know Minister has indicated that it's a finite budget. It's 7.6 billion. The majority of that budget, 3.2 billion, goes to food security and agrarian reform, which is program 3 within the department, followed by program 2, which is agricultural production, biosecurity, and natural resources with 2.4 billion. Then we have got administration at 970 million, and then lastly the economic development, trade and marketing with 883 million. Thank you very much.
Thank you, DG.
Okay, thanks a lot. We will now take the second round of questions, including follow-ups, if there are any. One, two, three, including Jolene, questions from WhatsApp. We can proceed in that order.
Good afternoon, Minister. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Llewellyn, Prince of Netwerk here in Winter. Just add on Jason's question with regard to the President that issued a statement last night. We just want to find out, did you speak with the President as a member of the GNU, or did the President issue the statement on his own? And what's the way forward with regard to this issue? Because this is one of the major issues that requires the attention of the whole GNU, and not individual members of the GNU giving specific statements on the matter. So what's the matter? What do you think? How should this matter be handled? Should the GNU be handled as a unit, or together, or should every member just make statements on their own? Thank you.
Hi, Minister. I'm the journalist from China Media Group. Nowadays, I focus on the beef pricing and beef price increasing, and also I just want to know what is your next step for the food and the mouth, the disease control. Thank you so much.
Sorry, my question on agent reforms was missed, Minister. Thank you.
Paul Vicchiato from Bloomberg is asking, do you expect any immediate job losses in the agriculture sector due to the U.S. tariff?
Minister?
Thank you very much. Llewellyn, I haven't spoken to the President. The President's been attending the BRICS summit in Brazil and has not been in the country. So I'm not aware of the process that went around issuing a presidential statement, but generally presidential statements are not subject to a round robin in government. The President is the President, and he must issue those statements. What is the way forward? Well, I think we've already made significant progress in the negotiations. We've put on the table a number of proposals. Those came back with the idea that there needs to be more ambition. we went back and the pencils were sharpened, but clearly that has not met the mark yet. And obviously we need to try and find out exactly where the mark is with the US. What is it that they actually want? And whether that's in the realm of the possible for us. Bearing in mind that there's some issues that we require consultation with our fellow members of SACU with. We can't just go and say, well, we'll do tariff X or Y without taking it through the South African Customs Union. That is our obligation to our SACU partners. And that is the difficult position that we find ourselves in with that. Obviously, Minister Tau's department would obviously need to look at things like tariffs on motor vehicles and on the import of heavy equipment, particularly for mining. And it's very clear that the pencil needs to be sharpened a little bit more, otherwise we wouldn't have got the letter we received yesterday evening. And so the way forward is that all of us need to work with DTRC, which is the responsible ministry for dealing with trade and tariff issues. And every government department should be playing its role to try and ensure that we can avoid the spectre at the end of the month of the 30% tariff. And I think that is the way forward. Why is the beef price increasing? Thank you very much for the question. The beef price is increasing because of the outbreak of foot and mouth disease in Gauteng province, particularly, where one of the larger feedlots, Karen Beef, has been affected. Karen Beef is responsible for around a third of the beef production in the country. And so obviously, with the law of supply and demand, when the supply dries up, the demand goes up, your price goes up. And that's why we've seen an increase in the price of beef. It's also why we've been proactive now in terms of the vaccination process, being led by DDG Sarache and his team, and a new strategy about how we're going to deal with FMD going forward. And obviously, the sooner we can get on top of that, the better. But what it does drive home is how important biosecurity is in South Africa and our country, and why biosecurity is one of the 7 top priorities of the department. Under the heading biosecurity is everybody's responsibility. As I said in the debate earlier today, vaccines are just one part of the toolbox that's available to you. Surveillance, track and trace, tagging, etc., all are things that we have to implement urgently now to ensure that we can get FMD under control. Brazil recently, the 25th of May, have declared themselves foot and mouth free without vaccination, but it took them a number of years to get there, to that point. And DDG Sarache and the department are convening a indaba with industry to look around the key strategic decisions that are going to have to be made about how we work together to get FMD under control. And in the case of the South American examples, it may be that we take a longer view on this and work towards using vaccination as a strategy to get FMD back behind into the red zones, that we start looking at establishing abattoirs in red zones, and that we look at other means to make sure we get the disease under control. And I think that DDG has been very clear that we can't just do what we've always done and expect a different result. It requires some new thinking, and that is the idea about behind the indaba, working with the red meat sector, with farmers in there to decide what is the way forward now for us to get FMD under control and to get the commitment and buy-in from all sectors to then adhere to that strategy and plan. And that will include track and trace. It will include surveillance. It will include monitoring at auctions and feedlots. It will include vaccination as a way forward. Urgent reforms, I spoke about some of them. I think that the ports and harbours and the rail networks are key reforms that we need to look at. I think we need to look at the removal of barriers that keep the private sector locked out. I think we've seen the huge success that we've had with Operation Vulindlela in dealing with the electricity crisis in the country. And I think that we need to create and expand more opportunities for closer collaboration between private players and government. I don't think it's moving fast enough. And to then look at some of perhaps the failing local government instances that are hampering our ability to grow the economy. Things like crumbling networks of road, sewerage, electricity and water, where even big metros now are running out of water, not for lack of dams being full, but because the infrastructure is not being maintained. So we need to get serious about these, around these key reforms in order to ensure that we can get on top of them and make sure that our country becomes a premier investment destination, because with that investment comes jobs. Paul, it's hard to work out immediate job losses. Obviously, we're in the midst of, particularly in some of the citrus sector, in the harvest season, and obviously there's a high degree of jobs there. Whether they would then stop harvesting as a result of something that could or could not happen at the end of this month, I think remains to be seen. However, as the saying goes, it's not over till it's over, and we've got to make sure that that we stand ready from the trade perspective to put that last-minute drop goal through the posts and secure a last-minute win on the trade. As I said earlier, we're not in this journey alone. We're joined by many countries around the world who are trying to navigate their way through this new approach by the American administration. And we can't change it. As I've said many times before, we have to learn to adapt to it, and adapt to it we must. And the department remains ready to work with DTRC and any other the government department to see that we can try and get a deal over the line before the end of the month. And I look forward to working and cooperating with all of our partners in the GNU to make sure that we can avoid this, because it will have, certainly in the short term, some pretty devastating impacts on our economy, particularly in the automotive and manufacturing sector. We've already seen what's happened in the Eastern Cape with the closure or the suspension of the Mercedes-Benz plant. We produce most of the combustion BMW X3s for the US market, and thanks to our favorable tariff regime, we're able to land them in America cheaper than they can be produced in Spartanburg, Virginia, the BMW factory there. So the big losers in this will be people in the manufacturing sector, and of course also the agri space will be touched. As I said, it's not only 4 to 7%, but very, very concentrated in those key sectors, and that's obviously my big concern now as the Minister of Agriculture about what we do now to try and prevent these tariffs from kicking in and ensuring that we can safeguard those sectors, particularly citrus, wine, nuts and table grapes, as well as other fruit products into that particular market. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. We are now moving towards taking the last round. Are there still questions? Going once, twice. Oh, thanks.
About the vaccine, the last update is 90,000.
900.
Sorry, 900,000. Yeah. So how is the update for it?
Yeah.
Have the new figures?
Do you want to take it, DPG?
Yeah, thank you very much, Minister. So the 900,000 is going to be used to vaccinate the outbreaks in not within the red zone. So we ordered it initially as part of the routine vaccination of the control zones. But immediately when they arrive, we're already in the outbreaks, and we address outbreaks already. We will be concentrating on the control zone, protection zone. We have already ordered another batch, and again, this is for the routine vaccination of the protection zones. So when you end up with an outbreak outside the
and far from the protection zone, Gauteng and the Northwest. That's a big worry for us. So we need to look at the process as that. The intention of government is to continuously vaccinate the protection zone, and if you notice, we also follow up with a follow-up booster vaccination in the protection zone. So the 900,000 doses were not ordered for the outbreaks that eventually happened. They were ordered for the protection zone, but unfortunately when we had the outbreak we had to vaccinate. And provinces of KZN, Limpopo and Mpumalanga already have, and they continuously keep vaccine doses for in the event of an outbreak. This is the normal practice. So even the batch that we've ordered, it's going to be kept as for backup purposes. We shouldn't be having outbreaks far from the protection zones.
I think it also is worth indicating that on Friday last week we lifted the disease management areas in the Eastern Cape and in Limpopo. So those areas are now open to trade freely again. Thanks. Thank you.
Thanks. Are there still more questions? I'm giving the very last round if there are still any questions. Going once, twice, thrice. Thanks a lot, members of the media, for participating in our media briefing. This concludes the briefing session. Thank you.